All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 36th webinar. It gives me immense pleasure that Ma'am Afshan Shireen has agreed to speak on our forum, Association of Indian Research Scholars, or AIRS. We have been active since September 2020, and we have successfully hosted eminent scholars including Noam Chomsky, Professor Joseph Nye, Professor Har Gopal, Professor Rajan Harshe, Professor Zoya Hassan, Professor Afroza Alam, Professor Mohammad Muazzam Ali, and many others. We have also released two newsletters, both of which included not just webinar reports, but also opinion pieces by scholars from across India. So if you have any piece you would like to publish, do consider sending us on our official mail. We are also available on all social media platforms, so do connect with us, share, like, and subscribe for updates and notifications. My name is Evangeline Nonklau, and I am a PhD scholar at the Department of English, University of Hyderabad. I will now introduce our speaker for you. Ma'am Afshan Shireen has been working at St. Francis College for Women at Hyderabad for 12 years and is now heading the Department of Political Science. She holds a master's degree and MPhil in political science from the University of Hyderabad and just recently submitted her thesis in the same university. This thesis is titled Communitarian and Minoritarian Perspectives in Urdu Newspaper Discourse from 1985 to 2019. So far, along with two publications, she has also organized various workshops and conferences. I would just like to say that on behalf of AIRS, we are extremely happy to have you on our forum and we look forward to your talk. Ma'am, on behalf of AIRS and also myself, I would like to thank you for your time and effort this morning. All right, this is all, and over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Evangeline, for that generous introduction. Um, I'm very, very pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this talk. And I've been following AIRS for a year, and I'm very impressed with the work that you've been doing. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes.
perfectly audible.
Yeah. I just got a little confused. Yeah. So I've been following AIRS for 1 year, and I'm quite impressed with the work and their activity, their agile spirit to widen the network of academics and inspire budding academics. And I wish them great luck for more good work. And also, before I start, I just want to say a few words to thank Ariba, because she's been asking me to do this for a very long time, and I didn't have unfortunately I didn't have time to do it because of my PhD. I was in the last stage of my PhD, and she's been very patient with me, and she's been patiently waiting for me to give a date, and it's finally happening. So thank you, Ariba, for your patience. So I think before I begin to say anything about the topic of the talk, I would like to first share my screen, my presentation. Evangeline, is this visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, it's
Yes.
visible. And so are you, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So the topic that I have chosen for this talk is basically it's actually a part of my PhD thesis, and my research explores various perspectives, contradictory perspectives in Urdu newspapers on various themes. And one of the themes that I have chosen to talk on is secularism. So that's actually a part of my PhD thesis, and I thought that this is an intriguing topic for many people, and that's the reason why I chose to speak on this. So there are two contradictory perspectives which I explored in the discourse analysis of Urdu newspapers, which I had chosen for my study. There is one perspective where secularism is an ideological political weapon to deal with majoritarian politics, to fight majoritarian communalism. And on the other hand, there's another perspective, there is another competing perspective, contradictory perspective, which I found in the discourse, where secularism is a normative commitment to keep various religious communities together, celebrate religious diversity, and to keep them united through composite culture, through shared culture, shared living. And so these are the two perspectives that I'll be focusing on, and how they are contradictory. And through as I move on, I shall try to tell you how secularism as a minor unfortunately, secularism as a minoritarian agenda is more pronounced in Urdu newspapers than secularism as a normative commitment. It is there, but it is somewhere submerged in the other narrative. And why it is so, it will get clear as I move on. So I just thought that I will mention the newspapers briefly, talk about them, the newspapers which I had surveyed, which I had interpreted, studied for my PhD research. And the ones who are from Hyderabad and are familiar with, who know Urdu and are familiar with Urdu newspapers, I'm sure they know about these papers. Siyasat, Rehnumai Deccan, these are the oldest, some of the oldest Urdu newspapers in Hyderabad. And they're all the newspapers which I have chosen, they are Hyderabad-based newspapers, widely circulated. The Munsif, Rashtriya Sahara, Etemad. So these are the five very, very popular newspapers from Hyderabad. Now, when I chose these newspapers and for my study, I didn't really have in my mind, and even at the moment, I'm not really claiming that these newspapers stand as the voice of Indian Muslim community. Because as all of us know, there is not everybody can read these. Not every Indian Muslim would be able to read these newspapers. We have Muslims across the country speaking different languages. So for a Gujarati Muslim or a Tamil Muslim, these are not the newspapers that would be, which are readable. So I'm not claiming that these are newspapers which constitute a domain that represent the voice, or that represent the opinion of the entire Muslim community. But it is important for me to say that there is a definite imagination of Indian Muslim community. There is a definite imagination of Indian Muslims as a homogeneous community. They are often addressed as Hindustani Musalman, and the newspapers primarily address this imagined community as their audience. And my interest was in understanding how they have imagined the Muslim community, and how, according to them, this imagined Indian Muslim community ought to be engaging with various socio-political issues of the country and values, one of them being secularism. So that is what was my curiosity when I was studying these newspapers. Now, what was a very interesting part of the discourse for me was the discourse on elections. And this is where I found a very robust articulation of secularism as an ideology meant to protect minorities in general, and Muslim minority in particular. And secularism as a tool to be used to fight majoritarian domination, cultural cultural homogenization by the Hindutva ideologues. And this was so elections. I had done a study of discussion of elections, general elections, basically. So my focus was on general elections to the Lok Sabha from 1989. I looked into 1989 elections, the discussions during election campaigns. So all of us know that during elections, when campaigns happen, all of us are politically charged, especially the discursive forums like the news channels, social media now, and definitely newspapers. And I saw that. I found a lot of discussion about which party is, which party is what, and what are the parties that Muslims in particular and minorities in general should be, targeting to vote for. And this is where I found a specific meaning of the word secular, as given in these papers, in these Urdu newspapers. So first thing which I would say is that in the study of the election discourse, I found that elections progressively from the late 80s to now, to the recent times, 2019 elections, I found that they have been seen as a battlefield where there are two major belligerents. On one hand, the one belligerent is the communal political parties, the BJP being the boss, basically the main party amongst them, who are considered to be extremely threatening to the existence of minorities. And on the other hand, the other belligerent is the entire camp of parties that call themselves secular, on the pretext of their empathy with minorities, their support for minorities. So these are the only two forces, political forces, that are viewed in the election scene in the Urdu newspapers. So you have the communal parties, the majoritarian communal parties that the minorities have to be scared of, wary of. They need to fight them out of the elections. And you have the secular parties, which, regardless of whether or not, regardless of whether or not they are secular, they need to be looked up to because they are not anti-Muslim or anti-minorities. So that's something which, and to explain this point further, I cannot not, quote statements from the Urdu newspapers, which I have mentioned to you. And that's what I'll be doing. As I read out the quotes, you will understand the tone of the narrative. So one thing I would like to mention here is that often we associate Muslims with the Congress, and we think that that is the only political party that is looked up to. But the fact is that, of course, the BJP is a party that is terribly feared by the Muslim minority, as I find in the Urdu newspapers. But the Congress also has not been immune to criticism. It has been fiercely criticized in these newspapers during elections. But that is not the point that I'm trying to make. Is while criticizing the Congress, how the word secular has been used, and that gives us, that clarifies the meaning of secular according to the Urdu newspaper discourse. So I think if I read out the quotes, that would be clearer. So this is from the first quote. The first statement that I'm quoting is from Rehnumai Deccan, April 1991, and I read it out. Let me also tell you that these are all the statements are in Urdu. Actually, they are originally in Urdu, and I have translated all of them. So these are all translated statements. They are originally in Urdu. So I shall read the first quote that you see there. Until when will the minorities be ignored by the Congress in the garb of secularism, And until when will Muslims be the target of this fraud, that is fielding of only a handful of the Muslim candidates in the elections? In this secular and parliamentary democracy, Muslims face some serious problems which the Congress led government during its rule all these years has not been able to resolve. What can be achieved from a secularism where a political party is able to, where no political party is able to do any justice to Muslims. So it's very clear that secularism is here being taken as an ideology that stands for justice to Muslims, and any political party that claims to be secular is expected to do justice to Muslims. And if they fail to do so, then their secularism is not real. I will read another quote. That's the second one there. In the garb of secularism, the Congress party has caused immense damage to the Muslim minority. That's again from Rehnumai Deccan 1991. And this is a more recent one from Rehnumai Deccan 2004. Muslims never attach themselves to the Congress or other secular parties so strongly as to not be able to think of supporting parties like the BJP, but unfortunately, the BJP did nothing concrete for Muslims to win over them. So, benefiting Muslims, pursuing the welfare of Muslims is something that is considered as a very important criteria to be, considered as a secular political party, as you can see here. Uh, I have more quotes, and I'm going to keep reading because, as I said, the tone of the narrative becomes clearer. So this is from Rehnumai Deccan, March 2014. At the moment, there are, as I said, so I was talking about elections being looked at as a conflict between only two arch rivals or belligerents, the communal parties and the secular. So that's what you see there. At the moment, there are two big electoral rivals before Muslims. One has been using secularism since independence only to betray them and do nothing more than make them a vote bank. That is the Indian National Congress. The other is always in an endeavor to wipe out Muslims from the country. Hence, so that's of course, it's a reference to the BJP and the Sangh Parivar. Hence, the Congress is no longer reliable, nor can any other party calling itself secular be trusted. Uh, I have another quote. This is from Etemad 2014, March 2014. There was a time when Muslims voted in large numbers for the Congress, but now they have lost faith in it as the party has failed to live up to its promises made to them. Muslims haven't yet got reservations, and Muslim youth continue to be arrested on false charges. Again, while criticizing the Congress, what is meant by secular is getting quite clear here. Uh, I shall quote the third statement here from the Siyasat, March 2019. From the opposition, the Congress is the only party that can challenge the BJP and its Hindutva ideology, but it has not done enough to impress upon Muslims and draw up an electoral strategy that will benefit Muslims, because, like others, the Congress also is afraid of the Hindutva forces. It is also scared of acquiring the label of Muslim inclined or pro Muslim party. Hence, it is neither able to gain the support of the majority nor get close to the minorities. I will quote another one from the Rehnumai Deccan 2014. Muslims have had absolutely nobody to represent them in politics. They've had no strong political platform, which is indispensable to the struggle for fundamental rights. The choice that they always face is between fake secular parties and openly communal parties. So there is this constant, articulation of the fact that the parties, or articulation of the view that the parties which call themselves secular are not really secular, and Muslims are only, they are nothing more than a vote bank for the ones who call themselves secular. So that's, I think, very clear. Uh, I shall quote one more from the Rehnumai Deccan. This is from 1999. Now, this is where, like I have used the word strategic policy in the title of the topic. And I used it because that also is very much, a feature of this particular narrative of secularism, that it's a necessary, it's a necessary shield to protect minorities against the majoritarian domination that can happen at the hands of the BJP. And if the minorities are to be protected, then they have to strategically vote. They have to strategically vote for one or two political parties that call themselves secular, that do not threaten the existence of the minorities. So that's the reason why I used the word strategic policy here. So here, secularism comes across as, as a sort of instrument, as a political instrument to shield the minorities and protect their cultural existence against cultural homogenization. So I think pertaining to that, these are the quotes that I will read out. So this is from Rehnumai Deccan, August 1999. In order to weaken the chances of the BJP and other communal parties, the secular parties need to build a strong alliance among themselves instead and contest the elections together rather than separately. So the strategic voting for the secular parties, the need for the secular parties to come together and fight the BJP and the Sangh Parivar. That's what is being, suggested here. I shall quote the next one from Rashtriya Sahara, April 2009. It is very disappointing that for the past 20 years, the BJP and the Sangh Parivar have been perpetuating such hate politics against the country's second largest majority, that is 15 to 20 crore Muslims, and that the Indian Muslims started seeing dangers to their own identity in their own country. That's why in every election, Muslims have to carefully think and decide to support and bring victory to some secular political party in Delhi and get a prime minister who will at least ensure protection to them. So this whole narrative of protecting their identity against any sort of assimilation in the majority, in the culture of the majority, is something that is being expected in the secular forces. I'll quote the third one. Even today, anti-Muslim BJP's danger has not appeared, and the only single way to ward off this danger is the success of secular forces. The Muslim associations must support. So that's from the Siyasat 2009. The other is from Rashtriya Sahara 2009, April 2009. The Muslim associations must support secular political parties in order to pull down the communal political parties. The other is from Rehnumai Deccan 2004. And until 5 years ago, so that's actually a reference to the NDA government. Until 5 years ago, during elections, the battle was among the secular parties only. But in these 5 years, many changes have come about, and now the electoral battles are positioned between the communal parties and the secular ones. Secularism has become very weak, and communal forces are becoming stronger. If this government continues for another 5 years, then the country and its society will be absorbed in the saffron color, and the culture of the minorities, particularly Muslims, will be in jeopardy. The country's secular parties and Muslims have a long way to go in order to be successful. So we also sense a lot of fear here, and that fear can, it's the secular forces that are expected here to ward off that fear of, being absorbed in the majoritarian culture. So there are lots of quotes. I thought that I would read out all of them. Let me just read out some more. This is from the Siyasat 2000, April 2009. The polling dates are nearing, and it is still difficult to figure out as to which party will form the government. Will Sonia Gandhi's UPA again come to power at the center? Will India re-establish its secular tradition? or will Advani and Modi once again succeed and smear the whole of India with the blood of Muslims? So you can just sense the tone here of fear, of bloodshed, that Muslims are can always be at the risk of, if the BJP is at the helm of affairs in politics, and their only hope is the secular political parties. So in now the other one is from Rashtriya Sahara. That's April 2000, April 14th April 2009. In the 2004 elections, Indian Muslims strategically voted for different parties in different regions by first figuring out the ones with the potential to defeat the BJP in each region and then voting en masse for them. So there are many such quotes. I realize that as I'm reading, they all are of the same tone. Uh, Maybe I would just skip the quotes in between, and here I would read out the last quote here on this slide. Today, Muslims face dual problem. On one hand, there are secular parties that have been continuously acquiring power by garnering the votes of Muslims, and on the other hand, there are communal forces whose aim is to suppress the identity of Muslims. Never before was communal environment as widespread as it is today. To resist these circumstances, the primary responsibility lies with those forces that consider themselves as champions of secularism and democracy. Muslims are the next group to take charge, as they are always the soft targets of communalism. So this is from Etemad, March 2014. This makes it very clear that Muslims have to take the responsibility of ensuring the victory of secular politics, secular political parties, because if they don't, they are at the receiving end of communal politics. They are going to be the victims of religious discrimination. So secularism is a savior for them. Yes. So I will just skip those other quotes because they are more or less the same. Like as I cannot resist the temptation of just reading that first one there. That's from the Munsif. The coming Lok Sabha elections will be a Mahabharat between secularism and Hindutva. So you can see how secular is constantly being used. It's being used to signify a force that is the opposite of communal in general and Hindutva in particular. So now my problem was when I was reading this narrative in the Urdu newspapers, my problem was that, is this all? Is secularism only about, protecting the minorities and, resisting communal politics, resisting communal forces, or there is more to secularism? And that's what took me into the task of exploring the other narrative. And interestingly, I found the other narrative, and that is the narrative of secularism in the broader sense. This narrative mainly expresses minoritarian fear of cultural homogenization. And the problem that I see here is that in many ways it repeatedly asserts the majority minority difference. It's the minority, the specificity of minority identity, the specificity of the situation of minorities as the oppressed groups of people who are at the risk of being victimized, and you have the dominant majority that they should be wary of. The narrative is only reflecting on the differences and the majority minority conflict, and secularism comes here just to manage this conflict and favor the minorities and save them from any sort of majoritarian domination. But as all of us know, in the Indian ethos, secularism is so much more than that. It's about celebrating the religious diversity of our country. And this is something that was, according to me, it was very aptly described by Rajiv Bhargav, and I would like to just bring him here. Um, he aptly describes the normative element that I'm talking about, the normative commitment of secularism that I'm talking about. Uh, he has described it as the commitment to enable various religious communities to live together well. So we have had this long history of living together despite our religious differences, despite our amazing cultural diversity. We've been living together, and what has kept us together is our shared culture, composite culture. Now, that's what, interestingly, I saw being articulated in these newspapers. So, there is another ideological landscape also of secularism. So the one that I had reflected on, that was one sort of ideological landscape where the focus is on the differences, the focus is on the victim status of Muslims, that needs to be taken care of, and secularism is there to just exclusively protect them against the dangers of domination of the other. But this is something that aims at taking all the communities together and celebrating the country's cultural and religious diversity. And as I said, that was very aptly described by Rajiv Bhargav as the commitment to enable the religious communities to live together well. And I wanted to know if this narrative is there. I wanted to discover it. And I found the narrative. Only thing is that the expression or the articulation of this narrative is a little weaker, not as robust as the articulation of the minoritarian narrative. Yeah, I would also like to highlight here that often when the word secular is used in the Urdu newspapers, and it is when it is used as the English word without any translation, that's what I discovered, that it was used in the way in which I had discussed so far, as the ideology, as the minoritarian agenda, or the policy to protect minorities, to ensure justice to minorities, to describe all the political parties which are not anti-Muslim and are in favor of their welfare and the welfare of minorities in general. But here, of course, the word has been used. I will just get you there. But the other words, in fact, I saw more of Urdu words being used here to describe the broader sense of secularism in the Indian ethos, like communal. For to describe communal harmony, the word that is often used is firqa hum ahangi. Firqa would mean the community or group. Hum ahangi would mean agreement. Quite often, etemad also is used. Etemad between the communities, it would mean trust. And another very frequently used word is Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. Probably many of you might be aware of the word. So that's a Hindustani term that is used for describing the composite culture, the shared culture of Hindus and Muslims. So these are the words which are often used in the Urdu newspapers to underscore the secular fabric of the country. And more often they are used to actually express the disappointment that this culture is fading away. The cultural diversity of the country is at risk, is in jeopardy because of the majoritarian communal politics. That is the narrative which I will take you into now. And again, I would like to bring up some quotes. So I just thought that I will, this is not the newspaper which was included in my study, but since I found it very interesting and it sums up what I'm trying to say, I'll quote Al Jamaat. This is from January 1977. Ours is a secular nation, and the nation has been kept secular because it is a nation of people following different religions, speaking different languages, holding different points of view. Our secularism is not an imitation of any other system, but is rather a concept adapted to the Indian conditions. So that actually says it all about what secularism in the Indian scenario is meant to be. So I'll quote Rehnumai Deccan, that's from April 2004. As I said, firqa ham ahangi, that's the word which is often used to describe communal harmony. So communal harmony is indispensable not only for the development of the country, but also for its security. While following our religion, if we try to understand other religions, then problems will be resolved on their own. The one who loves his nation will struggle to build mutual trust and tolerance between various religions. Mutual trust, agreement, the spirit to value each other's emotions, views, and culture, and an environment of fraternity are extremely necessary today. So, the need to maintain that culture of hum ahangi, intercommunal harmony, is something that is being stressed here. So this is a totally different tone now. I shall quote another from another statement from Rehnumai Deccan, that's from March 2014. A unique thing about our country is that different communities practicing various religions and cultures have lived together with love and solidarity for ages. Their peaceful coexistence and agreement is deeply entrenched and cannot be shaken. But for quite some time, there has also been a group that wants to end this culture of mutual understanding, respect, and solidarity, and has been trying to do so using religion, regionalism, majority minority factors. In 2004 and 2009, the BJP tried hard to come to power, but people chose secularism over communalism. So as you can see, so this is a reference to a totally different kind of secularism, which is about living together with tolerance. And there is also a constant acknowledgement of how this is, at the risk of being ruined by the communal forces. Uh, there is another quote, and secularism is being again described in a different way. Secularism originally meant, so this is, I'm quoting from Rashtriya Sahara, March 2014. Secularism originally meant detachment from religion. Hence, the countries that have a strong bonding with religion wouldn't want to call themselves secular. In India, secularism has meant religious tolerance, and it also stands for unity between different religious communities. This particular concept was developed during India's freedom struggle when the country needed it the most. Gandhi and Nehru are regarded as the main proponents of the Indian sense of secularism. Even after them, secularism continued to be associated with all those political leaders who believed in Hindu Muslim unity. But today, secularism is nothing more than a slogan. As I said, there is, along with celebration of the secular tradition of our country, there is also the tone of lamentation or disappointment over the fading away of this kind of secular spirit. Uh, and also, what as this quote says, the references which are being which are being made to figures like Gandhi, Nehru, that's something very interesting. So I have also found the newspapers referring to the Mughal rulers, trying to who tried to build, build on the secular tradition of the country. But then there is also a reference to Gandhi and Nehru as the figures, the leading figures of secularism that the nation needs to look up to. More importantly today in these times. I shall quote one more. This is from Etemad, March 2014. It is no strange thing to know that in Indian secularism, it is no strange thing to know that in India, secularism is the most misused word. There was a time when this word was taken to be the soul of the constitution and the country's democracy. Jawaharlal Nehru declared that India has never understood secularism in the European sense, in which it means detachment from religion. and not to be associated with any religious community. The leaders of India's freedom struggle have understood secularism as a system of thought in which all the religious communities are embraced and no particular religious community is exclusively protected. Um, India's values and diverse culture cannot be expressed in terms of the majority binary. India's strength lies in its diversity and not in one culture and its perpetuation. So this is exactly, I mean, this negates the other narrative, as I was saying. The other narrative underscores the majority minority difference, and this is the narrative which actually tells the readers to forget, to neglect this difference and focus on what brings us together, our shared culture, our affinities, which need to be further strengthened, especially in a time where when we there is the we find widespread communal politics. So this is a very long quote. Probably instead of reading through it, I would just say that here again a reference is being made to the Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb, which should be kept up. I will just read the last part of the quote because that is very interesting. Uh, Unfortunately, some fundamentalist groups that emerged during India's freedom struggle ended up dividing the country on the basis of religion, and such groups later went on to successfully form governments in different parts of the country. There was a time when non-Muslim women would cover their heads with their dupatta over the sound of azan, and Brahmins would visit dargahs. Hindus and Muslims live together in this country and cannot avoid each other. In fact, they need each other. Even the fundamentalist Hindus have needed the services of Muslims. This tradition has been consistent in the country, and it is necessary for the people and their associations to work for its continuity. Uh, that's from Munsif, and I quote another one from Munsif, March 2019. The fact is that a handful of people are out to ruin the age old Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb of the country and also its culture of tolerance. But a huge section of the population consists of people who are upset with the growing disharmony, and these people are enough to defeat communal forces in the general election. So there is hope on one hand that the secular lot of people will stand up against communal politics, and then of course there is disappointment also that this is not really happening. I would just I've come to the last slide now, so I want to read this because I found it very interesting. And this I picked up from the Siyasat during the general elections to 2019, March 2019, and a statement was made by Rahul Gandhi comparing the ideology of Mahatma Gandhi, the ideas of Mahatma Gandhi and Savarkar. So, with reference to that, the Siyasat, I quote the Siyasat. Rahul Gandhi was right in pointing out that in the coming elections, the choice before the people is between the ideas of Mahatma Gandhi and the ideas of Savarkar. Gandhi stood for an India based on the Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb, which has a very long history and still remains very strong. This Tehzeeb is peace loving and is open to every culture, region, and race. And Savarkar's idea of a Hindu Rashtra seeks to create a new India on the basis of violence. This vision looks at India as a nation belonging to the majority only and considers minorities as second class citizens. So, since the next one is the last quote, so I'll just wrap this up with the last quote there. That's from Rashtriya Sahara, and it expresses the same tone. The ruling government, this is from 2019, the ruling government has been determined to spread communal politics. So that's a reference to the BJP. The ruling government has been determined to spread communal hatred all over the country against Muslims. Though Maulana Abul Kalam Azad and Pandit Nehru visualized a secular India where voting of government would happen not on a religious basis, and on the contrary, a Hindu would be elected from a Muslim majority constituency and a Muslim would be elected from a Hindu majority constituency. The communal forces, right from that time, made this dream impossible. So that's the other ideological landscape that I discovered in the Urdu newspaper discourse. And so I have I have found this particular narrative to be less frequent and less pronounced than the other. In fact, I have not brought in the other quotes because I thought that I would be, crossing the time limit. But continuing my discussion on Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb, which is something that the Urdu newspapers very, enthusiastically talk of and really celebrate and appeal to the readers to celebrate. I just want to mention briefly the discourse, how they look at Urdu language, how Urdu again there is I found a mixed narrative here. On one hand, um, it is talked of as a language that is dying down, and it's a minority language and is not taken care of because it is associated with Muslims. But on the other hand, it is hailed as a secular language, as the language of Indian nationalism, because so many patriotic songs and poems during India's freedom struggle were written in Urdu, and it is also hailed as one of the proud symbols of India's Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb, and hence there is a need to protect the language, and the responsibility to protect it lies with. This was very interesting for me. Lies with, they don't say Muslims, they say Urdu wale. Okay, so Urdu wale obviously is a reference to all the people who speak Urdu. And there was a time when Urdu was largely spoken not only by Muslims, but Hindus as well of North India. So that was a very interesting narrative, which expresses the same spirit, the broader, perspective of secularism. So at the end, I would say that, as like I'm repeating the point that the the narrative of secularism as a minoritarian agenda will continue to be more pronounced as long as there is the fear of cultural homogenization, as long as communal politics exists, as long as there is divisive politics based on religious identity. The secularism as a minoritarian narrative is here to stay for a long time, and unfortunately that will constantly and progressively subdue uh, the broader perception of secularism, which I call positive secularism, that is meant to take all the communities together. So that was my presentation, and I stop. I shall stop.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for having spared your time and your effort today morning. You have given so much clarity on a very relevant topic, and this too from a very, I mean, from a rather unique angle. Now, there are a few questions that
Yes.
have been addressed to you at this moment, and I believe they are coming up on screen. Okay, the first question is: do you think what Iqbal and Jinnah feared has come true? That in the long run, Muslims will be a permanent minority in India and will never be able to represent themselves politically? That is the first question, which in turn will deny them the space in social culture and economic spheres.
Going by the narrative that I saw in Urdu newspapers, and these are like, widely read newspapers, though I said that, I mean, I do maintain the point that they don't really represent all Muslims, but they do, address Muslims as their audience, and they do express concerns for all Muslims of India. And yes, that is something their fear is has been constantly expressed in these newspapers, that they will the fact that they think that they are always at the risk, and the risk in fact to their cultural existence is increasing, year after year, actually proves them right. And
Mm.
that's really not a good, it's not a good sign for our country. That we are supposed to be a nation of, people living together, instead of, reminding one another that we are minority and majority. Yeah. And that's the reason why the minoritarian, narrative, the secularism as a strategic policy to deal with communal politics, which I consider to be a very narrow sort of a perspective, that is more pronounced because of this. So yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
The next question is: there are too many narratives in the Indian subcontinent itself that threaten the very notion that people have of Muslims. What are your thoughts on this?
There are too many narratives in the Indian subcontinent itself that threaten the very notion of a notion that people have of Muslims. I do not know what that means. Let me just read that again. There are too many narratives in the Indian subcontinent itself that threaten the very notion that people have of
Muslims
Muslims.
in India, probably. Yeah, and
Yeah, so actually, I'm not very clear on this.
on the question,
If this
I
question
think
can
the
be
everything that
clarified.
I believe that the
Yeah,
probably the the person who's asked means that there are many situations happening at this very point of time.
yeah,
Let's not refer to them by name, but they really affect the way that people
yeah,
look at Muslims. Other people in
yes,
India look at, yeah. So,
yes,
what are your thoughts on this?
yes. They are. Again, I will just stick to what I read, what I see, what I found in these newspapers. And the fear has not only been constant, the fear has been only progressively increasing. And yes, they are at the receiving end of discrimination, because of which, our other identities get blurred. That's something that I keep thinking about, myself being a Muslim. I keep thinking about this, that the identity politics of being a minority, or being a Muslim, being Hindu, is something that will always, create a false picture of who we are, because we are not just Hindus and Muslims. We are many things. Okay, and that also is part of our identity. Unfortunately, this kind of identity politics, creates very false perceptions that we are only Hindus or we are only Muslims. So that's what I would say. Yes, there are many perceptions, there are many stereotypes about Muslims which are perpetuated, and uh, that alienate them. I have found that sense of alienation being expressed in the Urdu newspapers. But the way we respond to them, that's something that, we need to choose how to respond to them. If we are responding to it with the same kind of identity politics, then there would be no end to this. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
I think the next question would be, I'm waiting on our coordinator. Uh, all right. I'm just going to read from where I can
Sure.
see.
Sure.
With the current political climate where there is erasure of most minority voices,
Yeah.
what, according to you, can be done to ensure that such voices retain their originality and consistency?
I think people like us, we can make a difference. That's all. That's what I would say. I think is that the question that is flashing?
Yeah, this is the same
With
question.
the current political climate where there is erasure of most minority voices, what, according to you, can be done to ensure that such voices retain their originality and consistency? So the domains are there. Like, I was, like, actually, through my research, I was only trying to throw light on this. It was a kind of, discovery for my own self. I discovered a voice and an opinion which I myself didn't know before I got into the domain of Urdu newspapers. And there are so many other spaces. So I think the mainstream media is still far from the voices lesser known. It will, for the years to come, it would be, the lesser known, the peripheral domains only where these voices would be confined. But I think people like us, the liberal minded people, we need to be more vocal to speak for justice to different kinds of people who have been, violated and discriminated against. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Now, another question has come up. Secularism, as is used in India, has different meanings and nuances. Okay, it seems that some believe it is used by politicians for their vote bank. Would you
Yeah.
agree with that? There are many who have this opinion, I believe.
Very widely misused term it is. I completely agree. Vote bank politics was acknowledged even in the Urdu newspapers that I studied, and my problem is also with the way secularism is used for, um, you know, uh, justifying some practices of the religious communities, and just shutting doors on, on dialogue, like often where, when the Muslim personal law question comes up, the voice coming, the dominant voices coming from the community is that this is our, internal matter, and nobody has a right to, interfere here. And it is whatever practices are being, opposed, they are part of our culture, and we have a right to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they use the term secularism. That
Secular.
India's secularism, Indian constitution is a secular constitution, and it gives us all the freedom to, practice our culture. So that's the problem where, that's where even I have a problem, that it shuts the doors on dialogue. So often, yes, it is misused. Yes, it is
It
misused.
is.
It is also misused by the majoritarians, like who would want to justify uniform civil code. Uniform civil code, of course, can be thought of, but when it comes from the right wing political parties, it's something else. And they
Something
use, yes, they use secularism in their own way. So
that
yes,
is. I
it's
think
complicated. It is complicated.
it's complicated. It's a
Yeah.
very dual-edged word. So this, I think, this next statement kind of reaffirms. Do you think it's used as a garb to cover up and to push under the carpet the negligence that these parties have towards minority once they are in power? I think you've pretty much
Yeah.
answered that one as
Yes,
well.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Ma'am, you have a few technical questions. Could you share the Urdu words for secularism? In the sense, are these quotes by editors or by Muslim leaders or contributors to the newspapers?
Yes. So these are the quotes by the editors, the writers, the journalists and reporters. I have used many articles from the editorials and opinion columns. So they are not really the leaders, Muslim leaders. Interestingly, some of the contributors of the of articles to these newspapers are non-Muslims also. You must have heard of some personalities, like television anchors like Ravish Kumar. He also contributes to the Munsif, to the Siyasat, but not many. I mean, most of them are Muslims, and they are all editors and reporters. And yes, that's a good question, which is like, what Urdu words are used for secularism. I didn't mention it in my presentation because I thought that, again, that would, like, it would make me cross the time limit. But that was intriguing for me as well. Whoever has asked this question, I share your curiosity, because wherever the word, like, often secularism is the word secularism, there is actually no Urdu translation. I never found any like any word, any Urdu word being used to signify, or to being used as a synonym of secularism. It was used often the way it is in English. So, but yes, when I was talking about secularism as a normative commitment to bring people together and to celebrate diversity, there many Urdu words are used, and I mentioned them also, like firqa ham ahangi, uh, etemad, qawmi ekjehti. These are words, but they are not really, they are not, I cannot call them synonyms of secularism. So often secularism is used as secularism only. at least in the newspapers that I have studied. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that sums up our questions.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm sure that everyone here will agree that it was a great learning experience to hear Ma'am Shireen's talk, her lucid arguments, enthusiastic delivery, and command over the topic. Now, I was particularly impressed with, the collection of the quotes. They captured the fact that there had been trust from the side of the minority, but sadly, they've also proven the very essence that minorities, especially the Muslim minority, live in constant fear and trauma in such a country as India, where, we claim to embody secularism and secular in our very constitution. Now, we live in very uncertain times, the pandemic with various other turbulent factors surrounding the lives of minorities across the country. I also want to take this opportunity on this platform to highlight the issues that are ongoing here in my hometown in Shillong as well, in Meghalaya, and how
Okay.
mainstream media still fails to accurately represent these events on their platforms. And such is the case for minorities. The fact that the word minority even still exists in these times show that the country is still in need of dialogue with regards to the various
Yeah.
issues of its various people, and it needs to acknowledge and address such issues so that we can erase the very idea of high and low, minority and majority, and things like that. So, as we come to the
Yes.
end of this talk this morning, I thank the president of AIRS, Ariba Asnad, for conceptualizing, realizing, and bringing to fruition this lecture. I extend our gratitude to our very eloquent speaker, Ma'am Afshan Shireen. I have learned so much from you today, and this is a very new topic for me. For taking your time from your very busy schedule. As you all know, she's submitting her thesis, and this is, not it's not an easy phase in her life as a research scholar. And thank you, ma'am, for coming and lecturing and giving
Thank
us
you.
your lecture on this platform. I also thank all our members who have worked so tirelessly and endlessly to make this event even possible. I would especially like to mention Aruna, Anil Kumar, Ajab Rangoon, and Manasa. We at AIRS are grateful for all your support, enthusiasm, and determination. And under the unfailing guidance of President Ariba Esnat, this event was made possible. We hope to see all of you at our next webinar on the 24th of this month. It will feature Dr. Somya Dechamma, the head of comparative literature in the University of Hyderabad. The lecture is titled To Translation, We All Belong: Thinking, Comparatism, Language, and Ethnography. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, ma'am. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for presenting
Thank you,
today.
Airs, for having me here. And thank you, Evangeline, for being such a lovely, delightful moderator to me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you guys. We hope to see you all next time.
Thank you.